This is the show that has a proven track record.
You have to be very, very basketball savvy and basketball smart when it comes to playing in the NBA.
This is a show that has a real approach to sports.
They're going to be fine. This is no big deal to anyone.
This is a show that's not going to give you the sweet stuff.
I still tend to think they'll be fine because that model manifested itself last year.
This is the award-winning show that's giving you the truth, just like they always have.
What are we talking about?
Where are we at in society today?
Listen and learn.
This is Delay of Game, the Sports Talk podcast.
Welcome into the show. Glad to have you with us. Another edition of the Delay of Game podcast. Ryan Swanigan, Matt Prigby. Brent Bonfleur is not with us today. We are slightly saddened by that. A little bit of the, I can't say late winter blues after the last 3 days here in Lincoln. It feels just absolutely great outside. So I don't know what. But he came down with something. He's also got a event going on today, so he's already pushing it as it is, so we gave him a pass for today. But we are glad that we can still bring you the podcast today. Me and Matt are going to tear it up just like we did last week with that NFL podcast. Woo, man, that was rather popular. So good stuff in store for today. And but first, I have to say that I know a lot of times my rants get weird and dumb and all that other extra crap. Well, let me explain then today why I rant about what I rant about.
It's now time for a little R&R.
Ryan's rant, that is. Back to the explosion of a topic that Ryan has in store for today's podcast.
Yeah! Woo! Yeah! Take it out!
There's something that's just really bothering the guy, and now you're about to find out what it is.
You gotta be kidding me! Nobody's tackling anybody! Do it live!
There's some absurd things going on in the world of sports, and Ryan's pretty fired up about them.
Hello? You kidding me?
They are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook.
That's not true!
And now, here's the original Delay of Game produced, Ryan's Rant.
So a lot of us believe that there is an overall moral system that resides within ourselves, and it controls how we live our lives, what we do, what we don't do, how we act, things of that nature. And I'll just be, fully honest with you up front. That's kind of how I base my rants. And it's I don't want to say that it's necessarily a religious issue, but it's just basically about what's right and wrong, not necessarily about what's fair and what's not fair. But when I bring to you these topics that I ran about, like the Baylor sexual assault allegations or the Louisville suspensions, I know in the past I've done things. I did the Bo Pelini firing and the Mike Riley hiring, the Mike Riley hire, and things that have gone on in baseball and basketball and football and whatever, and sometimes even outside of that, all of those I rant about to bring to you. It's the fact of there is a serious lacking of common sense in our society nowadays. Some of you probably don't even know what that means, which I don't even want to go and to explaining what it means. If you don't know, just go look it up. That's why we have Google. But some of the things that are happening in our society nowadays are because of that, or because of a lack of patience. The patience factor, there's two major factors in our society that I have just noticed that always seemingly come back around and are front and center. And that is a lack of patience and the issue of laziness. There is, quite honestly, too much laziness that goes on in our society, but there's also too much impatience that happens as well. The combination of those two things, it's not good. It really isn't. It's why we have a lot of simple problems in society, and especially in sports, that could really be avoided. For example, we're going to be talking about in a few minutes here why people don't understand the drastic difference between college and pro sports. There is a huge difference. And Doug Lowry and I talked about this on the Guest Work podcast last week with Nebraska men's basketball. But it's not just there. It's not at Nebraska. It is in all sorts of college sports, all aspects. Not so much in college basketball, but more so in college football, I would say. Now, the patience factor and the laziness factor, they have a huge grip on sports. And that is when you get politics mixing in, and you get really a reality check. Because, and I said this in a rant prior, gosh, it had to be, almost a year ago. Sports is not invincible to keeping political factors out of it. For example, when I say that, I mean, I guess the Baylor incidents, all the sexual assault allegations, that's not sports. That's real life. Politics, getting involved in sports is the decisions of how those things are handled. Laziness affects those decisions greatly. We have seen that. Or a lack of courage. It's always one of those two things. A lot of the time, it is a lack of courage to do the right thing. And that's why I bring in the morality factor back into this. How you are raised, the morals you gain in life, what you determine is right and wrong, that has an enormous factor on how people live their life, the things they do in life, the choices they make, how they handle situations. And in a lot of cases, it leads to bad things or harmful things or hurtful things. Take the latest example of this. Take the Kesha situation. That whole thing that broke out, I think, Friday, where a judge ruled against Kesha breaking the contract, and there might have been a restraining order with it too. I didn't read, fully into that. But that is an instance where you have to understand right and wrong, and what is the best for people. And unfortunately, the decision that judge made is not what is best for Kesha or, anybody who's involved in that situation. And it is sad. It is really sad because now Kesha probably has to take extra steps to make sure that her life is protected and is more secure, quite honestly, than it needs to be. And it's disappointing. But that is what has happened to so many other people who are not as popular as Kesha. The Florida State incident comes to mind. That whole thing is still a mess, and it might remain that way for quite some time. Because you have, supposedly from everything that we know, conflicting reports, yet the Tallahassee Police Department came out and said that they mishandled the situation. So it's like, well, what do you believe? What do you go to? Because people lie. Let's be honest. People lie. You're seeing that right now in the whole presidential campaign right now. You see it in the NFL with Johnny Manziel. I don't need to bring up anything further with that. It's everywhere. And that goes back to the morals of what you believe in. And if you believe that taking the easiest route to, brush the situation off and wash your hands of the whole matter is the best thing, no, it's not. And it never will be. But the vast majority, not all of society, the vast majority of society believes that that's just, take the easy route. Take the easy way of life. The easy living path, Do what's best for yourself. Don't get involved, It's like, no, come on. The golden rule. Treat others the way that you would be treated. Are we really... Is that just a saying to gain Facebook likes and favorites on Twitter? Because that's what it feels like it is nowadays. We say these things. We tweet these things. We post these things. But we don't go and do it. We don't go and do the right thing because it is easier to type something out on your phone than actually get up from the couch in which you sit on to type that thing out on your phone and take action. That's the laziness factor. That's the lack of patience factor. Because it takes patience to go up and do something. Like lose weight, for example. It takes a lot of patience to lose weight, to force yourself to continually work out day in and day out. And we just don't want to do that. We want to do the less complicated thing in life. And that's not the right thing to do. That's not how you solve problems. So my point of this rant here is be courageous. Don't be lazy. And for God's sakes, have a little common sense. Because following society might actually really not be the popular thing to do. Actually follow through with the phrase stand out from the crowd, because that's how change comes about. That's how better things come about for not just yourself, but for those who are around you. that affects society. All you have to do is just go and do the right thing. That's all. That's basically all it is. When I rant about stuff here on this show, I rant about things that can be simple, but we choose to not make them simple. We choose the easy route. I use air quotes around that. That turns into the farthest thing away from the word simple possible. Be simple. Do the right thing because it turns into the simple thing to do. Now, is it easy? No. But it's the simple, right thing to do. Johnny Manziel, don't be an idiot. Simple thing to do. Is it going to take change? Yeah. But it's the simple thing to do. You keep yourself out of the headlines for the wrong reasons. Now, if you end up in the headlines, make sure it's for the right reasons. But it's not complicated, folks. It's not a complicated way of doing things in life. Yet we make it that way. And I just can't understand why we, as a society, the vast majority, not everybody, the vast majority, just for whatever reason goes on and goes the easy route, but then it becomes complicated. That may never make sense to me ever for the rest of my life. So try to make things simple. Have morals. Be courageous. Be patient. And don't be lazy. That's one thing that kills me. Don't be lazy. Just go and do it. That's all you have to do. Just go and do it. Simple as that. It literally, it is that simple. You just go and do it. Period. All right. Enough of that from me. I probably bored Matt Rigby to tears over here. Just going on and on and on.
I was riveted.
Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate that.
This is Delay of Game,
a sports talk podcast. Available on YouTube and online at thedelayofgamepodcast.wordpress.com.
Delay of Game is going to the monitor and having a look at something controversial or crucial from the week in sports. It's under review.
All right, so as I said, we're going to talk about basically a topic that was brought up, and this is kind of an overarching theme for, I guess, college sports and pro sports. And that is, in continuing with this thing that I've noticed and how I'm different from the rest of the crowd, is the rest of the crowd, they're a bunch of fans. I consider myself not a fan for sure, except when it comes to the Cubs, because that's just kind of been ingrained in me for over 10 years.
I'm sorry.
Coming from a Mets fan over here. But for every other sport, I try to make myself see the bigger picture. Because that's what you're supposed to do as the job and duties of a broadcaster, especially of a play-by-play announcer. You can't get all wrapped up in that stuff. Now, you can get wrapped up in the moment, in the environment, in the excitement of what's going on, but not to the point where you're cheering for the team in your play-by-play announcing. You have to remain neutral. And that, if you can do that, you totally get a completely different picture on how sports really runs itself, how college sports and pro sports are so different, and why fans don't understand the enormous difference between college and pro sports. Now, as I said a few months ago in a rant on the route, fans are the greatest thing for sports, And they're also the worst thing for sports. They're the worst thing for sports because they don't actually see what's really going on. They don't get the idea of the bigger picture. And that is ever so prominent in college sports, especially in football. Now, basketball's going on, and that at certain institutions is rearing its ugly head. But let's, for the sake of the argument, stay with college football for right now. You get, on average, 3 years with one specific player. That is usually how long most players stay at the college football program. Is 3 years. Now, some of them are there for 4 years academically because they redshirt, but then they play for 3 years. That's the true average of the situation. 2 of those years, on average, are with you coaches get, and I'm speaking in terms of coaches here. So coaches, on average, get 3 years with one specific player. They get 2 years, on average, with one group of players. Offense, defense, special teams, the whole team. However many players are on that team. 2 years, on average, with a set guys of, I would say, probably 60, 50 or more. 2 years. Now, there is way too much pressure being put on college coaches, in my opinion, to win it all in 1 year with a roster that they will, on average, with 50 or more players, have 2 years to work with. Because it's not pro sports. We are in a culture and a mindset of pro sports dominates our way of thinking. And it dominates the college aspect, and that's not fair. It's really not, nor is it right. Because folks don't understand the fact that you can't have a set roster for 5 or 6 or 7 years. You've got, as I said, on average, 3 years for one player, 2 years for a team that, has the same players, that has 50 or more of the same players on it. That and then there's so much that goes into the season where they're facing a team for the first time, or that team is changing up schemes. They're showing a different style of offense. It's basically pulling together everything that you can learn in real, actual game scenarios. That's the pinpoint of it all. Practice doesn't equate to the game. That should be a common sense thing right there. Like, no duh, Ryan. Yeah.
It's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah. And yet when we get into the game scenario, we expect that, okay, everything that you learn in practice should translate to the field. Yes, to a degree. In practice, you know what your defense or offense is going to do. Because you know those guys. You don't know what Illinois is going to be doing defensively or what Michigan State is going to do offensively. You have an idea. You've watched film. You've seen their games. But until you step out onto that football field and that whistle blows and that football is kicked off, the game changes. The actual game itself changes when everything becomes front and center. So that's all in year one. And then in year 2, you have a better understanding. That is, in year 2 of that core group of guys, that's when you have the opportunity to go and win it all. And if you don't, well, you missed your window. Now you got to, basically reformat what you do with that next core group of guys that you're probably going to have for a year or two and try it again. Now, some coaches, they can't do that because they're not at the elite level. For some programs, it is so much more difficult to get to that elite level than others. Compare Alabama and Nebraska. 2 key examples right there. Both of them are basing off the fact of program history and success. They both have it. One more so than the other, though. But nowadays, it's more based on the fact of weather, location, popularity, and let's be honest, let's be fully honest with this. How good are the girls? How good looking are they? Because seriously, 17, 16-year-olds, football players, I should say, at least, they're thinking about, how good looking are these girls down here that I'm going to be surrounded by, What are my chances? That's what it is. Now, everybody doesn't want to say that. It's like, oh, you can't say that. Why not? It's true. Are we going to make up another lie for that? That's what it is. We try to ignore that aspect or not talk about that aspect because we don't want to talk about that and get uncomfortable. But that's what is going on, along with so many other aspects. Programs that do well in the field don't always necessarily mean they have the best available in whatever it may be on the campus. Facilities, resources of whatever type. Again, there's so many factors. On the pro level, it's a little bit more even. And it's also the pros, where you have, for example, like with the San Antonio Spurs, about, Matt, almost 10 years that core group of guys has been there?
Over that, almost 15.
Parker,
they played in the finals with Duncan in 98.
Yeah. It's the same group of guys that have been there for that long.
The Pats in football.
Yeah.
Cards.
The Yankees in baseball, kind of, but I mean, everything changes in college. It changes on the college level. And we're all getting all bent out of shape. Nebraska can't win. Stanford can't win. Because they are only working with a window of 2 years with a core group of guys, 50 players or more to be successful. You can't tell me that that's going to be just snap your fingers and boom, you're winning championships left and right. It's almost impossible. That's why Nick Saban is so great. And Urban Meyer is so great. They have mastered the ability to bring in the best talent in the world. Get it to come to their programs and then somehow mold those boys together to be men on the football field, not do stupid things off of it, remarkably, at least in the case of Nick Saban, and be successful and actually come through and break the law of averages. It's a rarity, and everybody is jealous of it, but everybody doesn't understand And fans don't understand that it's not easy to do. This is one of those scenarios where you can say that you can go do it, and it might sound easy enough, but it is a complicated matter to bring in 18-year-old football players, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, JUCO transfers who are just young and as immature as it gets, and expect them to be able to learn plays, put them together to perfection, essentially, on the football field, and go win a national championship. Not every coach out there is going to be able to do that. And in the last few years, that has been so front and center in exemplifying itself. And it's not just about the SEC conference getting it, yeah, whoop-de-doo, that's great. They are finding the talent that is in that area because it's probably one of the best areas for talent, and they're getting after it. Now, there's talent everywhere in the country, I get that. But for whatever reason, the SEC has it figured out. And coaches down there, specifically Nick Saban, Les Miles, and now Urban Meyer, who was with Florida, now at Ohio State, they figure it out. They can pull it together. Every other coach in college football, they can't. Because they are just not at that level. Am I wrong about this, Matt? I mean, this is a very complex issue that is very difficult for fans to understand. Because this is a big perspective type of scenario here.
Well, let me tell a personal story about this. When I first read, you sent out to Brent and I the lineup for today's show, and I first read the under review topic. It was the first thing that popped into my mind. I played college sports. I played sports at a college level, and I played it at the JC level. And, it didn't hit me at first because not only had I played 4 years of high school football with a certain group of guys, but in reality, given how small my town was, I had played 10 to 12 years of football with a group of guys.
Yeah.
And we weren't under the same coaches and stuff, and it's not like we were building to the ultimate climactic moment of our senior year or anything, because, that's not how Pee Wee football works. You're not building towards that. But the point being with that is that I was surrounded by the same group of guys, and tendencies became normalities, and so when I got to the JC level, one of the first things, I think that's what I was expecting, first of all, but one of the first things that was pointed out to me that really struck me, number one, and has stuck with me since, number two, is that for the longest amount of time at the JC level that any group of guys is together, the same group of guys that is 3 months. And that's during the actual season. That's the longest. I mean, maybe you can stretch it out to 4 if you put training camp in there. That's the longest amount of time because you're at a 2-year school. And so the guys who are sophomores are on their way out. The guys who are freshmen, they've been together, but they're not with the sophomores anymore after the season ends. They stay with each other, the freshmen that is, till about March. Then they start to get, actually probably even sooner, February, they start to get an influx of kids for the next year, and you restart the cycle all over again. And you slowly get people, more incoming freshmen pouring in, and it's a revolving door.
Exactly. And
I think building on that to relate this to your overall point, I had to learn that, adaptability became the most important quality within the program. And we, you had to take your lumps along the way. It was obvious that we all wanted to win. Our head coach wanted to win maybe more than any human being I've ever met personally. But he had to step back, and he was an older guy, so I knew he'd been doing this for a while, so I knew that he had done this at some point, despite how much it bugged him. But he had to step back and evaluate and say, it's almost impossible to create repetition and to quote myself, to instill tendencies becoming normalities. It's almost impossible to do that with a revolving door. Now, you stretch that out to the 4-year level, and it doesn't get much better. You know, like you try to, and that's the goal of coaching, is to preach tendency, to preach habit, routine, and winning tendencies, winning habits, and we do this, it'll get us to this, and we do it long enough, it'll get us to this. And I feel so bad for them, especially at the basketball level where guys can bolt after 1 year.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to do so. And so if we step back and concede that that's basically impossible, we're then forced to evaluate the landscape of college sports from a competition standpoint and say, well, what wins and what should we be okay accepting as maybe not winning all the time, or maybe not losing, but accepting as not winning all the time.
Right.
And I think the answer is, when you hit on this with Saban and Meyer, they're ultimate recruiters at ultimate schools who have tradition and can build on that, and they have tradition even within themselves that they can recruit. And so then, despite that 4-year window of revolving doors, they can just get superior talent in each and every 4-year window that can exceed and win despite not having winning habits or winning tendencies and such. It's just better talent on the field. You look at other schools across the country who don't maybe have that tradition. And I'm talking about like power conference schools that just aren't quite on that same level. Like you could put, let me think of an appropriate example. You could put, I mean, before this year, you could put a place like Clemson up there. You know, like Clemson, and maybe even going forward. I mean, Clemson is a good school. They have some tradition, but before this year, they're like 7 straight years of 9-3. Nebraska fits that bill perfectly, like 8 straight years of 9-4 or such. And so, you have to be able to accept that 9-4, given the revolving door, and given that you, and I'm talking to fans here, given that you don't have the same recruiting prowess, given that you don't end up with the same talent, and given that you have to, on the fly, adapt each kid to what you want to do with your program. And frankly, you're taking a chance with each kid. When you recruit kids, you think that they are going to fit what your mentality, what your mantra is, but you don't know. And sometimes you have to think maybe they won't even, but I'm so desperate for talent that I still got to bring them here. So you're adapting on the fly the whole time. And when you look at it in those terms, 9-4 or 9-3 is pretty remarkable. It's a pretty good job by any of those programs who can consistently do that. And so, you know, it goes even further. I remember at the JC level, our head coach used to have to adapt the offense he ran every year to what he had. And he had to know his personnel thoroughly through and through. And so sometimes that takes even within an entire season to accomplish. And when you don't even give a coach at any college level an entire season's worth of patience, then those lumps that come in the first year, or in the first half of the first year sometimes, are met with brutality amongst the fan bases. And I don't think that's right, to your overall point. I mean, it's a problem with fandom. It's a problem with the possessive qualities that come with fans to their own team, as if, you know, they owe it to them, and the fans' lives are being lessened if the team isn't as good. And sometimes I agree with you. You just have to look back and appreciate both the logistics of the situations as well as just the game itself, and then realize that, hey, you win more than you lose, and that makes it worth watching at the end of each season. And so, I don't quite understand the pressure that's been substantiated over the past probably decade and a half, I'd say.
And it's only going to get worse. That's the thing. And that's the power of social media. Social media, gives us the opportunity to chicken out, I guess, for lack of a better term, and say the things that we don't like about the team, when in reality it's like, okay, you don't understand the bigger picture of what is going on. In perspective with college sports. Now, in pro sports, that is obviously different, but that is where, okay, you can apply these challenging standards that you have set because everything is so much more equal there. Everybody's got facilities. Everybody's got, all-star players, and everybody has money available to sign players to get the job done to win the championship. That's not necessarily the case in college sports. And fans, and it's especially from what I see here at Nebraska, these, and I mentioned this last week in the Guesswork podcast with Doug Lowry. Nebraska basketball was a constant joke after the 90s. Kind of like the football team. It was a joke in the Bill Callahan era. And with basketball, once the 2000s rolled along, it was like, name me a star player from Nebraska men's basketball that was in the 2000s other than Lance Jeter. There's nobody. There's really nobody there. And as I told Matt this before we began this podcast, name me a coach that the student section literally rallied themselves around and supported through wins and losses. Name me a coach that had that much support from the student section. Seriously. There was none. There is now. That's the thing. You have the students who love Tim Miles. They would do anything for Tim Miles. That was never the case with Doc Sadler. And I can't even name some of the coaches that were before Doc Sadler because they just weren't that popular. So, and then with the football thing, and I've said this enough times before in the past on delay of game, it's just like, and Brent's hit on it too. Husker football fans, not all of them, but a lot of them are delusional because they believe that the success that they got with Tom Osborne can be year-round. Can it? Yes. Will it? No. You know why? Because Tom Osborne is a one-of-a-kind coach. Every program gets that one-of-a-kind coach. Kansas with Eric Mangini. No, not Eric Mangini. Eric Mangino. Yeah, Mark Mangino.
Mark Mangino.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. That's too close together. Alabama with Nick Saban. LSU with Les Miles. Urban Meyer, wherever he has been, and the programs that he has touched. Jim Tressel with Ohio State. Jim Harbaugh with Stanford. The list goes on. Pete Carroll with USC. The list goes on and on and on. Mac Brown with Texas. I'll definitely say Bob Stoops with Oklahoma. Are you kidding me? And Barry Switzer as well. Bear Bryant. Chip Kelly in Oregon. One-of-a-kind coaches that are at the right place at the right time and build up championships. It's just a matter of, of not forcing the issue. Nebraska fans forced the issue, and Sean Eichhorst said, all right, we're not going to, we're going to find the right guy. We're not going to go and get a great name. We're going to find the right guy. They got, right now, a guy that the program, the fan base can rally around. It's not going to be all blown up on the sidelines. It's the occasional once in a blue moon blow up, which Mike Riley just had, 2 of those, I think, this year. Now, is Mike Riley going to win a national championship? I don't know. My gut says no. I don't think so.
No.
But crazy things have happened. Chip Kelly came from UConn football. When in the world has UConn football been great? Oh, that's right, when Chip Kelly was there. Oregon hired Chip Kelly and then took him to the promised land, not fulfilling the ultimate goal, but he got him there. It's like the rarest of opportunities and occasions. You just don't expect it. You really don't. And you can't force the matter. That's the thing. It's like relationships. You get in a relationship, if you force the matter, it's not going to work out too well because you're expecting something and you're more often than not going to fail. But when you least expect, that girlfriend to come walking around the corner, and she does, and it ends up working out, that is the best part of one of the best parts of life because it was unexpected. And unexpected things that turn out to be great, that is one of the more enjoyable things in life. At least for me, speaking from a personal experience. It's the same way in college football and college sports. The coach you least expect to end up at your school, that normally turns out to be a good thing. But they have to have displayed something of greatness prior to that. Urban Meyer at Utah, Chip Kelly at UConn, Nick Saban at Michigan State. It just doesn't happen immediately. Again, this is just a very complicated process that only few understand because only few are not fanatics or even the basic fan. Some of them are fans and they get it, but it's very few. It's usually the broadcasters that, see this whole big picture and figure out what's going on. Now, do all broadcasters? Nah, probably not. I could throw out a few names. I won't. But I know who they are. And I'm not talking about, broadcasters who I know personally. It's not just them. It's also, some of your major guys at some of the big the big networks. So you just have to understand the fact that there is a bigger picture to college sports and that there is a huge difference between pro and college, and you can't apply the pro aspects to the college level. It's not how it works. It truly does not get that way. And I feel like I've been, I've ranted again here and just, blah, 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 yada, 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 taking it up. Oh, man. Am I making sense here, Matt?
Yes. Yeah. No, I think the way you put it with the girlfriend analogy was actually pretty good because, and this has been written, that you can't, as a philosophy in life, you have to live into things, you can't go out seeking. Like, you can't wake up in a day and say, I'm going to make this happen today, because
don't
more often,
go to things, let them come to you.
Right. More often than not, if you go out seeking that, you may attain it, but it won't be the right means, and then therefore won't be the right ends. And that's the same with being a fan, like, or extending beyond that, or I guess you could say not extending beyond that, because you've classified fan so well. It's the same thing with applying too much pressure on people to make changes and make decisions and make drastic strides in order to try and reach unattainable goals.
Do the right thing immediately.
You just have to live into those types of things, and when you let go sometimes, and I don't mean that as in a total defeated, proactive and in a reactive sense, but I mean it in a practical and in a logical sense from a fanhood standpoint or from a fandom standpoint. And so, I agree with what you're saying.
Before we move on, we have 2 under review topics today. Before we move on, we'll, get a quick quote-unquote break from under review and jump into the random facts. First, facebook.com/delayofgame. If you want to interact with us on social media, that is an option. Twitter.com/DOG_podcast. That's another way. And also our website, if you missed any podcasts from the route, since I mentioned that, or from Delay of Game so far this year, the Delay of Game podcast.wordpress.com. We also post everything on YouTube, so you can look us up there as well. Let's get to the facts.
Time now for an original.
Hell yeah. Yeah!
The Delay of Game Random Facts.
Fact 1.
Matt Rigby.
Okay, so my fact starts with a number, and that number is $10 million. That's how my fact begins.
Oh, baby!
Draft season is upon us officially, with the combine set to kick off in Indianapolis this weekend, or this upcoming week, my apologies. And man, draft season is maybe the ultimate embodiment of how ridiculous it is to be a fan, what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
But
talking about expectations.
Right. But it's also hard to take your eyes away sometimes. Sometimes it's hard to for a football fan purely, and this is kind of the double-edged sword of draft season, is for pure football fans like myself, for example. I love watching the combine because I love watching guys just go through the drills. It's like being at a practice, and it's like appreciating the actual bare bones of the game of football. And anyway, a lot of people over the years have picked apart the combine and tried to analyze what its use is, and tried to, from an analytics standpoint, really come up with a meaning for the 40-yard dash, or a reason for the 40-yard dash. And it's become an event in and of itself, long story short. However, the Indy Star ran an article this morning that kind of highlighted the real reasons for the combine, the reasons that never get talked about. And Bill Polian was on the record in this article saying that the combine is, at the heart of its matter, an event to properly gauge medical health within athletes. And he doesn't mean like sprained ankles or torn ACLs or things such as that. He means actual life-threatening medical conditions that may have gone undiagnosed. And they bring the absolute best doctors and physicians into the combine, and the first 2 days, which are going on right now, are actually spent in total medical evaluation of each player. And they check things such as the heart. They do a lot of EKG procedures. They check the head. They check all those areas that maybe go underchecked when you go just for normal routine ailments or checkups prior to, say, an event such as the combine. And they've actually found quite a few things over the years. And I brought up the $10 million as my random fact because Star Lutulele, the standout defensive tackle for the Carolina Panthers, who just competed in a Super Bowl, who's had a great couple years to his career. He's really a budding star, and who was a consensus top 5 pick the year he came out, actually lost $10 million if you look at his average mock draft slotting before the combine compared to where he was actually drafted. Each mock draft, if you took the compilations at NFL.com and ESPN.com, had him at average going number 3 overall. Star Lotulelei ended up going number 14 overall after he could not compete at the combine because of a heart issue that was undisclosed, maybe not undisclosed, but undiagnosed prior to the combine. He had to sit it out, and it cost him 11 spots in the draft, and it's been well documented that all the teams that passed on him passed on concerns for his overall health. He went number 14. That cost him $10 million.
Incredible.
And it's tough to say whether or not he would value that test, because obviously now Lutulelei's life has been potentially saved in that they've now begun to treat the heart condition. But the fact that that cost him $10 million has got to eat him up. So it's just it's another element to the draft process that maybe goes unseen, and it's another element to just how much teams are investing in players that they cost a player $10 million, something that was of no fault of his own. So that's my random fact, how much money actually gets lost, not only in a player's performance, but in a player's natural medical conditions.
Thinking about, this has nothing to do with medical conditions, but Johnny Manziel, and, expected to be in the top 10 for drafts, and number 23, how much money he lost.
Well, and I think that's what I'm kind of hitting at, is like with guys like, from a moral of the story standpoint, with guys like Manziel, and because we see guys plummet in the draft all the time. Like Aaron Rodgers plummeted because people didn't know if he had the skills. People like Manziel plummet because people don't know if he has the makeup, which he's proven he doesn't.
Yeah.
But both of those things are directly attributed to something that those two guys could do about it. Like those two guys could do something about their off-the-field problems or their on-the-field skill set. A guy like Lotulelei, he can't do anything about a heart condition he may have. That frankly, he never had the supposition, number one, or the resources, number two, to properly diagnose. So it's really kind of unfair. It's an unfair element to the combine, but it might be, according to Bill Polian in that article, the most important part of the combine, which, again, I found interesting.
Definitely, I agree.
Fact 2.
Ryan Swanigan.
Something not as cool as Matt Rigby's topic, I'll just say that right now. But I just was looking at this because I was trying to see, lately there's been talk, greatest of all time, Michael Jordan, Tim Duncan, Kobe Bryant, who was better, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Dr. J, Akeem Olajuwon, etc. And I was looking at trying to see about, like how much do these guys make when they play? Because nowadays, in total, they have made off their contracts like over, some of them. Kobe Bryant's made over $300 million in his contract. And some of the records weren't available as far as the numbers go. Like Larry Bird, had 3 years listed for money that he got. But so then I was like, well, how can I still utilize this? Well, I looked at jersey numbers because, we're talking about all these great players, top 10, Hall of Fame, whatever. And I wondered, it's like, how many Hall of Famers had one number in their entire careers in the NBA? Michael Jordan, believe it or not, had 3. We associate, that's the fun one I like to, spit right off. We associate 23 with LeBron, but more so with Michael Jordan. Well, Michael Jordan didn't wear just number 23. He was 12 for 17 games, believe it or not, in the year that he returned, the 94-95 season. He wore number 12 that year, and then he was 45 for the rest of the time with the Bulls. And then with the Washington Wizards, he wore number 23 after 3 years of retirement in 2001 through 2003. Those 2 seasons, he wore 23. So he had 3 numbers, believe it or not. Michael Jordan, of all people. LeBron James, he'll be a Hall of Famer. He's had 2. 23 with Cleveland, 6 with the Miami Heat. Kobe Bryant, Laker for life, has worn 2 numbers, 8 and 24, believe it or not. Tim Duncan, in the subject, of multiple players, Hall of Famers wearing different jersey numbers, Tim Duncan has only had 1. Magic Johnson had only 1. Tim Duncan, 21. Magic Johnson, 32. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, 2 teams, same number. Milwaukee Bucks and the Los Angeles Lakers. Wore 33 with both teams. Wilt Chamberlain, I thought, was great. Wilt Chamberlain, Philadelphia Warriors for 2 seasons, 13. Then San Francisco Warriors, before they became Golden State, 13. And then 1 year with San Francisco, there was a break in between, or in the middle, I should say, before he was traded. 13. Philadelphia 76ers in the second half of the season, 13. And then finishing out with the Lakers, 13. So multiple teams, 3 different teams for Wilt Chamberlain, but the same number. And then, of course, because, folks would be like, you left out Larry Bird. No, I didn't leave out Larry Bird. He wore number 33 his entire time with the Boston Celtics. So some Hall of Famers had 1 number. Some Hall of Famers will have or had 2 numbers or multiple numbers, which I thought was really interesting, especially, again, with Michael Jordan. We associate 23 with him. Well, don't forget about the times in which he wore 12 and he wore 45. So that I thought was great. Great stuff.
You're listening to Delay of Game,
a sports talk podcast. On Facebook.com/Delay of Game and on Twitter at DOG_podcast.
All right, so we continue now with the second under review topic. Since Brent Buffler isn't here, we can't find out what's really going on or a barbecue either. So we have to continue with the second topic, which my roommate, Devin Cleach, the fabulous, illustrious Devin Cleach.
Devin Cleach.
He brought this up to me yesterday. It's like, that'd be a good topic to have on your show. I was like, yeah, it would. And I kind of forgot about it. And then Matt Rigby brought it up this morning. It's like, okay, if 2 people who I trust thoroughly in the sports world are bringing it up, we got to discuss it on the show. And I watched the ESPN report, or Outside the Lines, I can't remember which one it was, about the Nevada high school basketball mercy rule. And being from the state of Nevada, did I say Nebraska earlier?
No, you said Nevada.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Being from the state of Nevada, I almost said it there, Matt Rigby is probably one of the people who's very knowledgeable on this subject. So we turn the second topic of a review over to Matt Rigby.
Well, first I want to actually kick it back to you, and I want to ask you, and I wish Brent were here because I wanted to kind of crowdsource this. I want to just ask you first and foremost, in general, outside of Nevada, without any specifics of knowledge, and that's almost cheating you because you like to have the completion of the story.
No,
but
of course.
If someone came up and asked you for a yes or no, or not a yes or no, but a quick 2-3 minute response to how you feel about the question, how do you feel about mercy rules in general at the high school level? Think they're necessary? Think they're ridiculous? How do you feel?
My first answer is it depends on the sport.
Basketball.
Let's go basketball?
Yeah, but we could stretch it to football, too, because I'm going to take that. I'm going to use football in my overall statement as well.
Playing, baseball, that was the sport I played my entire life up until college. That's the one I go to when it comes to mercy rules. I think those are perfect. I think those are just fine.
Well, the funny thing about baseball mercy rules is, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, or like, because I may actually be wrong, or correct me if you just think I have another, or you have another opinion. I think baseball mercy rules are just because people get bored with the game and they don't want it to go on forever and ever. But it's also a thing where, like, baseball doesn't have a clock, so theoretically a team could score 9,000
exactly
runs, so that's baseball. And mercy rules I actually think are necessary anyway. But go on.
That's the mercy rule that I've never once had a problem with, except for the fact when you can't reach it, like the 10 after 5 rule, and you're bottom of the 5th and you have a 9-run lead, and the 10th run is on third, and you can't score them, and you have to, continue on another inning. It's like, oh, man. Basketball, I have never once in my life thought that a mercy rule was needed because as you just said it, there's a running clock. It's not like baseball where, good grief, we're sitting here and it's already 13-0. It's the 4th inning. How many more runs are we going to put up, or how bad is this score going to get, before we finally, thankfully, reach the 10 after 5 rule? There's a running clock going on here, folks. And if it's like 77-12 and, the home team is winning, you just run that clock. And, hell, I wouldn't even stop it for free throws, for a foul call. Just let it keep on going, because this game's over. The sooner it's over, the better. Those players who are on the lopsided end of things are, it's like, hey, this is life. This happens. Now you got to turn around and figure out what you can do better and use it to build upon getting better.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
And throughout Nevada, they have actually, I think it's when the report said that when a team goes up by 50, they do running clock throughout the second half. And see, I don't know how I feel about that, because I'm always like my favorite thing about baseball, and the mercy rule kind of affects this sometimes, but it's also like my favorite thing about golf is how perfect the games are. They're so properly designed in that, like, everything is organized properly, everything is statistically driven, everything is it's not chaos, it's not like football or basketball that you start the game and it's just organized chaos, which is fine, that's inherent to those sports. But I've loved how calm and structured is the term I'm looking for. Baseball and like golf have been, but like And really, sports in general are overall structured, despite like basketball and football being chaotic. And so it's always bugged me to have a running clock, because like that creates a disparity among the structure. Like all of a sudden, we're not going to play by the rules of the game. So that's always bugged me. But it's something that you can do. I get it. It's not a big problem at the high school level. It solves the issue in a way of games not getting too far out of hand and then not having to call it because of a mercy rule.
Right.
Okay, but so what I struggle with the most with the mercy rule, just from a societal standpoint, is, I'm going to go all James Harrison here for a second, is that I don't understand why it's the same as a participation trophy. I mean, I don't understand why we all have to win. Like, we all have to feel like a kid knows. Like a kid in a high school game knows, especially if you're the type of team that's getting demolished. I mean, like, some of those scores were like 59-3. I don't know if you saw the ESPN report that was circulating this week about the high school game that ended 101-1 or something like that, right? And tell me for a second that these high school kids, these high school girls don't know, or boys playing basketball don't know that, like, hey, we got shellacked, like whether it be by 50 or 49, if that's the cutoff. Like, if a team, because that's what teams do in mercy rules, and that's the biggest joke of it all, is I've watched mercy rules throughout. I used to ref junior league football games, and the league had a mercy rule at 32. And teams would get up to 31, because they obviously could within the first half, because they were just better than the team they were playing that day, and then they'd stop. And it's like, tell me the kid doesn't know. Like the kid on the losing side goes home and says to his father after the game, well, hey, at least we only lost by 31 instead of by 32. You know, like, what's the difference? You get shellacked, you get shellacked.
Oh, yeah.
And most of the time, I'm going to be frank in this, too, most of the time, a team goes into a game knowing they're going to get shellacked. It's just how it is. Most of the time, you have an idea that a team is just substantially better than you. Or you can tell on the first, second, third, fourth play of the game, you know, in the first, second, third, fourth minute of the game. And so, like, the kids know, and we don't have to say, well, you're a winner because you only lost by 31, even though the kids know that team stopped trying at 31. You know, like, own up and take your victories just as well, or take your defeats just as well as you take your victories.
Because it's a game.
Right.
It's not going to completely destroy your life. You know, it's not like you're gonna be jailed. You're not going to get jailed for getting blown to pieces, you know? It's a game. There's no consequences for losing.
Well, and there are very few teams. I think the mercy rule has its merits when you think about, are there teams who take joy in demolition? And I don't think, like, there are a few teams that are that way, but there are so few. Like, most teams, if they go up, like, I remember there was a school when we played high school football. There was a school, and they're Sparks High School. They're probably still bad. I've kind of lost touch a little bit with the ins and outs, the specific ins and outs of Nevada high school sports. But matter of fact, I do know that Sparks is still bad because I know that Elko still beats them by 55 points every year. But I would feel bad when I was playing a game against Sparks at a certain point to where I'd be like, you know what? I don't want to break off an 80-yarder and score anymore and then turn around and whoop it up with my teammates. You know, like, it's not as thrilling
certain level
anymore.
of respect
right, like
being applied.
And that's almost like a self-imposed mercy. Like we police that ourselves. And so I don't think it's necessary in that regard. But you know, like, from a societal standpoint, we don't need to punish teams for winning. It's an apology for winning. You know, and I think that's ridiculous when, like, most teams, 97% of teams are honorable enough in victory to not rub in a mercy like that, or rub in a merciless victory.
You shouldn't, I just thought of this, you shouldn't be punished for winning, and you shouldn't go to jail for losing.
Right, yeah.
That's how simple it is in sports.
Now, here's my overall problem, or that's my societal problem. Here's my specific problem. Coming from the state of Nevada. 5 years ago, let's see, I'm in my fourth year of college now. 6 years ago. The state of Nevada realigned their, and this is the NIAA, realigned their sports leagues. Now, in Nevada, we have 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. And it was becoming clear that there were teams in the 4A that were there for population reasons alone, school population reasons, that just could not compete with some of the other 4A schools. And a state like Nevada, and, you know, I've been around Nebraska high school athletics the last couple months, and it strikes me as a little bit curious that Nebraska doesn't suffer from this quite as severely as Nevada, because they're in the same boat. The state of Nevada is geographically disproportionate population-wise. You have Reno, and then in the north, that takes up a huge population base. And then you have Vegas in the south that dominates the population compared to the rest of the state, which is largely rural. But you'll get some places like my hometown that have enough kids in their high school, because it's the only ticket in town, that we were in the same group as all the Reno and Vegas schools. And it became obvious that we couldn't compete anymore. And it was time for realignment. So we realigned about 6 years ago. But it was a joke of a realignment, because you were expecting a competitive, competition-based realignment. And all they did was realign us based on cost-effective guidelines. So, for example, the Elko baseball team, because Elko's on one side of the state, we usually had to travel 4 hours for any of our games. The ADs revealed that their real reason for realignment was that they didn't want to spend that money anymore to put into travel. So
it's a nice drive, though. I've been through it. It's pretty nice. At least for me, coming from Nebraska. So
once you get to Reno, yeah.
Well, yeah. That's right.
So
Yeah!
The how do I want to put this? Okay, so the team, after the realignment of 6 years ago, teams like Elko ended up playing teams that had previously been, Elko was a 4A school, top classification. Ended up playing teams that had previously been 2A schools. And just because they were an hour away instead of 4 hours away, and they would demolish them. And such becomes the mercy rule. Now, in the last 6 years, we've realigned 2 more times in the state of Nevada. Each time it's been cost-based. And Vegas has continued to explode. Reno has continued to explode to a point where it's become more and more obvious that the competition disparity is night and day. And so what you're left with, and this is what gets me, what you're left with is a Las Vegas school, an inner city Las Vegas school, like in the piece they were talking about, in the ESPN piece they were talking about, Centennial High, traditional power in all sports. Las Vegas High, traditional power in all sports, home of Bryce Harper. Bishop Gorman High School. I mean, who doesn't know Gorman? They're nationally top 10 every year. I mean, DeMarco Murray went to Gorman. You look at any D1 school, they've got Gorman players on their roster. These types of schools are playing schools that are 4A, top classification in air quotes, 4A schools on the outskirts of Vegas, or maybe even an hour outside of Vegas, who clearly can't compete. They're in the same league, and they're blowing them out every year. It is so obvious, because when you take the 4A, it is so obvious in the state of Nebraska that you could split that into 2. You could even say the 4AA and the 4AB, or you could say the 5A in Vegas with some Reno schools mixed in, and then the 4A, and then the 4AB, you know? And so the fact that they reclassify for money purposes alone rather than competition purposes creates the need for a mercy rule. You wouldn't have the need for a mercy rule if there were just one or two teams that were outliers from a competition standpoint each and every year. And so I must applaud, I'm getting off on a tangent a little bit here about my home state, but I must
start the rant music up again.
I must applaud states because like I said, I've been around Nebraska a little bit, Nebraska high school sports over the past 4 months. I must applaud other states because you don't hear about mercy rules in a lot of states. You've heard about it in Nevada now because Nevada doesn't classify correctly their leagues. And so I must applaud other states who take competition seriously from a high school standpoint and realize that there can be parity if they actually work at creating it. It's not like in college that we talked about to start the show. This has kind of been a theme. It's not like in college where you have like a recruiting system, you know, like you can create parity. You can look and say over the past 15 years, who's been good, who hasn't been good. Let's throw cost out the window. Let's just try to keep it fun for the kids so that we don't have teams that are losing by 70 points every game. It's just something that happens once or twice. We don't have to punish the teams who are winning by 70 points and create a bad brand of basketball or a bad brand of football.
Exactly.
And take all the fun out of it for them and discipline them and et cetera, it goes on down the line. So, an ode to other states and wag of the finger to the state of Nevada, and they need to open their eyes and figure out what they're doing from a high school level. And before this extends even further, because, boy, I'd hate to see all of a sudden, you know, we have mercy rules at a higher level just because
college sports,
right? Just because of societal expectations. So Nevada needs to follow the gauntlet put into place by other states.
Yeah, definitely. And I just think again, you've got a clock. Time will eventually expire, and it's just like you. Is life easy? No, of course not. Yet we're trying to fluff it up now and be like, oh, it's okay. You know, da-da-da. It's like, no, it's not. Stop it. Give me a break here, will ya?
You gotta be kidding me!
It's, you know, life's all fluffy and happy, handy, dandy, whoop-de-doo.
That's not true!
Exactly. Come on. Let's, be real with ourselves here. The thing, again, this all goes back to my rant. We're trying to do the easiest thing that will not have problems result in it, but problems do result in it because people just don't have the patience for dealing with this. It's laziness. That's what it is. It's laziness. They're trying to make the world all easy and crap. The world isn't easy. Look at the rest of the world outside of this country, the United States. That's not easy, okay? Be glad that's not us. But at the same time, understand that those people need help, and we have to help them. We also need to make sure we're helping ourselves and not becoming so stale to reality. You know? I feel like that's something you would say. Stale to reality. But seriously, that's what we're becoming. We're just trying to numb ourselves to gosh, I don't know, problems that exist that we just don't want to deal with anymore. So we're just gonna, be all, clam up and say, good job, you are good, you participated well. Instead of, and now that I think about this, I've ranted about this before. Instead of finding out what you were meant to do in life and what you were, what you can go do with your life.
I hate to put it this way, but I will, because from a historical standpoint, there is no America, and then there is no baseball or high school basketball or high school football without competition, man. Competition is the feeding force for everything that has happened in the history of this country, and to suck competition out or the inherent aspects of competition out of the lives of kids in an age group who may need it the most at that particular point in time in their lives is a total injustice to the future of the country. I mean, if you want to really put it on a macro sense and put sports in a societal realm like that, I mean, it's an injustice to what we have always stood for, and it doesn't teach the kids enough about how to take ownership and how to it's too much on the easy way out, like you were just talking about.
Yeah! Isn't this country great?
Matt Rigby nailing on the head. We're gonna move on here. I don't need to say anymore. I wonder, now that I'm looking at old sound bites, it's like I wonder if there was something,
It takes clutchness, if that's even a word.
Yeah, Ben McLaughlin throwing in a little bit there, but I mean, just unbelievable.
I'm going to go home and get on the Facebook.
Facebook.com/delay of game. Twitter.com/DOG_podcast. The delay of game podcast.wordpress.com. It's delay of game. And now?
Time now for Props 2. The segment of the show where delay of game gives Props 2. Someone or something.
So,
Ryan Swanigan. Props 2.
I'm giving props, since this ties in perfectly with the show, to a guy who went out and got a summer job. And Matt Rigby, you'll be in props too in the coming weeks. I'm going little person by person by person. Tommy Rezach, a kid who, when I met him, was not really in tune with baseball. He didn't exactly know how to call the game, and it took a little bit of time. And last year was that time for him to learn how to call baseball and how to talk about it on air and the fundamentals of it, and really getting in with the nitty-gritty facts of baseball. Well, Tommy Rezach, one of the 3 great broadcasters that are still at KRNU right now, before they're all gone, and I bet you they'll probably be all gone soon, whenever you leave or whenever Michael Dixon leaves, whoever is last among you 3, that's when they'll be gone. Tommy Rezach landed a play-by-play job. He is now going to be the voice of the Keene, New Hampshire Swamp Bats this upcoming summer. One of the 13 teams in the New England Collegiate Baseball League. Is that the same league you are in?
No, I'm in the Cape Cod League. But
You're not too far away from him.
Right. As someone who is now as well-versed in wooden bat summer leagues as a human being could be, I can give a little insight. The New England League is one of 8 leagues officially sanctioned by Major League Baseball itself. So one of the and Perfect Game, if you're ever curious, I don't know why you would be, but if you're ever curious, Perfect Game has put all these summer leagues into tiers, and the New England League is a tier 2 league, which is pretty substantial. It's right up there behind. There's only 2 tier 1 leagues. So the New England League is right behind the Cape Cod League and the USA National Travel Team. So yeah, the New England League has a lot of premier talent, and this is an important part of summer wooden bat league stuff. It has a lot of premier talent, has a lot of premier networking opportunities, a lot of scouting, and a lot of MLB influence, given that it is sanctioned by Major League Baseball. And I think we all, and you said you would get to me in a couple weeks, and so I'll say it again then, but I'll say it now. I think we all owe a thank you to you for having kind of blazed the trail in that, and I sincerely mean that, and kind of planting the idea in some of our heads. So I appreciate you tapping us all into the gold mine, the hidden gold mine that was Summer Wooden Bat League Baseball, that it is Summer Wooden Bat League Baseball. It'll be extremely beneficial repetitions for guys like Tommy and myself.
Because you shouldn't have to go pay to get a summer internship. You shouldn't have to pay for a summer internship.
Right.
So, and me, I had graduated. I was looking for a job outside of college and something to get me going. Chillicothe thankfully called during spring break, and at the end of March, I accepted it, and it was a phenomenal experience. Now, Chillicothe, compared to, Keene or the Cape Cod League or Michael Dixon, is going to be in, I think, North Carolina,
Forest City.
Yeah, all 3 of you guys got leagues that are way higher up than Chillicothe. So I was just basically trying to, I guess, I don't know, get play-by-play jobs for people who I knew could do it, but more in fact, just to give options for a summer job that also relates to your field, and this is that field.
Right.
The summer wooden bat leagues, that is how you take what you have learned and what you're passionate about, and you go and get a job with it instead of getting a paid internship. Or, well, I don't even know they do paid internships anymore. It's more basically you have to pay to get the internship. And that's ludicrous. That is just ridiculous. Businesses should be going after the students, not the students going after the businesses. That's not how it works. So you just bypass all that crap and you get into going after a summer job that those businesses and radio stations are looking for. They are looking for people to fill those jobs. And I guess somehow, one way or another, I have basically sent 3 of KRNU and UNL's finest current broadcasters out into 3 areas of the country in which the 3 leagues and that are just phenomenal. And there's so many others. But I guess I owe it to Michael Snow, because Michael Snow is the guy who got me onto the Summer Wooden Bat League, and or because Michael Snow did the California Winter League. So that's how I first knew of it, and then I found the Chillicothe job, and then I found that, there's all these other leagues, like all over the place, and so I owe it to Michael Snow, and I guess you guys say you owe it to me. It's like, nah, not really, but whatever. I will take the compliments. And that was not Matt Rigby's props too. That was my props to Tommy Rezaj for getting the job. This is Matt Rigby's
Matt Rigby.
Props 2.
I mentioned last week that I want to start incorporating a little more hockey into the podcast. We're going to do a separate one in the coming weeks, maybe even next week as well. But I couldn't actually resist doing my props today to Jaromir Jagr.
Oh, yeah.
Jaromir Jagr,
so.
right. Jaromir Jagr, whether you're a hockey fan or not, should be appreciated as just a sports legend.
It's a household name.
Right. And Jaromir Jagr moved into third place all time on the goal scoring list yesterday with 2 goals. He passed Brett Hull for third place. Jaromir Jagr had his 741st and 742nd all-time goals yesterday, and now he only trails Wayne Gretzky, who he will never catch, at 894.
Oh, yeah.
And Gordie Howe at 801. And, I mean, Jagr talks about playing until he's close to 50, so he could catch Howe, theoretically. I don't think anyone will ever catch Gretzky. But it needs to be mentioned that Jaromir Jagr is 44 years old. Jaromir Jagr has played hockey for a long time now, and he is still, you get a lot of NFL players that have made it to, a couple kickers have made it to 44. A lot of baseball players have made it to 44.
Jamie Moyer made it to 50.
I think Julio Franco used to as a hitter.
Julio Franco.
Right, he played for a long time, and
he's still playing.
But these guys,
incredibly,
these guys don't produce into their 40s. Jaromir Jagr is on the best team in the Atlantic Division right now, which is the second best team in the entire Eastern Conference. He is producing at a superstar level still, and he's 44 years old, yet he shows no signs of slowing up. I mean,
That's something else.
It really is. It's something remarkable. It's been great for the entire Florida Panthers organization, which has kind of been a hockey doormat for the last, since 96 when they were in the Cup. And so it's been really cool to see Jaromir Jagr do that. Like I said, props to him on moving into third place all time. And props to Jaromir Jagr who says that he doesn't understand why you would ever want to stop playing the game while you're still physically capable. And he puts the game and his love for it first and foremost, and he religiously works out to make sure that he's never cheating the game from year to year or even from game to game. And he's given a ton to the entire sport of hockey over his expansive career. So props to Jaromir Jagr, now third place all time. And he did it yesterday on his 44th birthday.
How about that?
So props to Jaromir Jagr.
That's great. That's going to do it for the show. Before we leave, we have no predictions because Brent is not with us. And I have been down this road before. When people are not here and you predict stuff without them, they get all bent out of shape the next week. I wasn't here. I can't do it. No, it's not fair. Yeah, okay, fine.
Brent would be a little disappointed, too. I'll forego you kicking it to me because
go ahead.
Brent had a good week, finally.
Really?
We talked last week about Brent needed a strong performance to get back into the race. He was trailing by a couple laps, to be honest.
Yeah, a little bit.
He was sub 500. Brent led us all.
Really?
Last week he went 8-6.
Nice.
So
that's pretty good.
We had 14 games. We had a heavy college basketball slate. As to be
good day yesterday.
Right, as to be expected because the NBA was on their All-Star break. So we didn't, and the NFL is over, sadly. Super Bowl champions.
Don't worry. Right. Baseball is
looming,
underway.
Thank goodness.
It's underway.
Pitchers and catchers. We should have done props to all 30 organizations for inviting their pitchers and catchers as they do every year.
They're singing, go Cubs, go! Go Cubs, go! Yes! Hey, Chicago, what do you say? Go Cubs, go!
All right, sorry, I got carried away.
Anyway, I don't know what to say about that. Anyway.
What's the song for the Mets?
Let's go Mets. Or Meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. I'm sorry. I can sing it for you a cappella if you want. That's a real song. That's a real theme song.
A real song?
I like Go Cubs Go, but it's not a real baseball song. It's like something you would hear on
they play it for the bleacher bums?
It's like something you would hear on a mixed channel. It's so Cubs, too.
Yeah.
Let the war
better.
begin. Let the war begin. And every time I see someone on campus with a Cubs hat, I let them know. I let them know with my look. Anyway, back to what I was talking about.
I'm just glad you're not a Yankees, Cardinals, or White Sox fan. Otherwise, this would be. We don't even have like a beep button, you know.
Well, the thing is, there's like Cubs Mets is a rivalry from our parents' childhood.
That's true. Yeah.
It's not a rivalry really from our childhood, although there's a lot of people who are predicting probably accurately that it's about to be heavily renewed, as they're probably the two best teams in the NL.
Yes.
But what I dislike about the Cubs is more from, because you just said, at least you listed 3 teams. Like, you don't have a hatred for the Mets. What I dislike about the Cubs is, number one, I'm in Cubs country now, whereas I wasn't before.
Yeah, I'd say Royals.
Yeah, well,
I'd say more Royals.
For obvious reason, I hate the Royals as well. But, and the Cubs fans are just like there is a difference between, and this isn't a bash or anything, it's just like what I'm used to as opposed to what I came here and was greeted with. The Cubs fans are wholesome, like they're just wholesome Midwestern fans. It's like, shucks, we're the Cubs, we're the lovable losers mantra and stuff.
Embrace that crap instead of trying to, come up with solutions to solve the problem.
I can't do that. It's too nice for me. Even.
Yeah.
And so Cubs fans aren't for me. Anyway.
Be glad I'm not one of them.
Right, yeah, no.
Yeah. Back to the records.
We have mutual respect.
Yes,
yeah.
of course.
Anyway, but opening day looms, and then for those 7 games out of the year, 6 games out of the year, just know how I feel.
Oh, yeah. Thankfully, you might actually not be around, no, yeah.
I'll be in Massachusetts.
Yeah, that's right. So we won't be face-to-face, so we'll be okay.
Right.
However, quick story. I was this close to going to see Cubs Mets in July.
Were you?
Yes.
Well, I don't know if I'll ever go see it again. I was at Wrigley last year for all 4, and they got swept.
That's right. Yeah, well, my sister, it didn't work out with her schedule, so now we're going to go see Cubs Mariners instead, which is like,
yeah,
I can lay the one time I can lay into John Kipper and be like, take that, buddy boy. If that's what happens. Now, I probably just jinxed it. But anyways, back to the prediction records.
Back to the prediction records.
Yes. Brent had a good week, 8-6.
He dominated the latter half of the college basketball slate. He went 8-6. You split right down the middle at 7-7.
Okay, not bad.
I went 3-11. 3-11. I just too many road teams. I'm done. I'm done taking the road teams. That's what killed me. Anyway, now our season totals are: you are back into first place, having passed me with a 32-23 record on the year. I am still in second place despite Brent's good week and my bad week, indicating how far Brent was behind. I'm at 29-26, and Brent back over the demarcation line, if you will, is at 28-27, back over 500.
Nice.
And with a winning percentage at least. So we'll move forward in 2 weeks, but that's where we'll sit for now.
There you go. Good to be back on top like I always usually am with these predictions. I always battled John Kipper for that top spot. Always came out on top. Now I got to battle with some kid who's familiar with the Vegas odds and probably contacting people before... he's like texting him during the predictions, trying to figure out,
If only
Didn't we make a joke about that? You got like a little IFB thing. You got Vegas in the IFB.
If only you knew.
Oh, that's good. Well, that is going to do it for our show. Another great show in store. And next week, we will definitely have Brent Bonfleur back. Hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers and praying. And, of course, Matt will be here as well. Facebook.com/delayofgame, at DOG_podcast on Twitter, and the Delay of Game podcast.wordpress.com. We're sorry if we offended anybody or, told you what we think the world really is, but that's what we're here to do, is bring reality to the situation in the sports world. So, see you next week.